We're gonna make it look fly with some DIY. We're gonna make it look fly with some DIY. We're gonna make it look fly with some DIY. Uh-oh, thrift diving.
Hey, what's up? It's Serena Pia from thriftiving.com, which is a podcast, a blog, and a YouTube channel that helps you decorate, improve, and maintain your home using paint, power tools, and thrift stores without sacrificing your budget, the environment, or style. Welcome to episode 53 of the Thrift Diving podcast. You know, this is the episode where I am the least prepared. It is literally 5:17 on the night that I am trying to release this podcast to hit publish. I had kind of not really a crazy day, but I had kind of a busy day and I was out looking for yarn. I'm going to start this new knitting project. And I knew that when I got home, I was going to have to sit down and record. Last week, I was phenomenal. I got my recording done early in the week. This week, it didn't happen. And so as I'm driving, coming home, thinking about, well, let's see, what topic am I going to talk about today? I like to sometimes think about what is it that happened to me during the week, the lessons that I've learned, or the experiences that I could tell you about that really kind of had some meaning for me. And of course, I always try to relate it to DIY, but it doesn't necessarily have to be DIY. I think it can be related to anything going on in your life. And the major theme this week was perfection. And I think this is a topic, if you're like me, you're somebody, when you do something, you want to do it right. And you want to do it right every single time. And you want to do it as perfectly as you can. Because if you don't, then those little mistakes are going to bother you. If that's you, this episode is it's either going to drive you crazy because you're going to think, well, that's not the advice I needed. I'm still looking for perfection. How can I get to perfect? But I think if you're someone who wants to ease off of yourself a little bit and give yourself a little grace, then I think this episode is going to help you. And I'm relating this to the things that happened to me personally this week, but also the things that I noticed while working in my shed. I was kind of confronted with this idea of perfection. And not just perfection, but also there was another lesson that I learned this week about how to move a little faster in projects. And I am so behind in my shed project. It's not even funny. Like where I thought I would be at this point is so far behind where I actually am that it's really funny looking back on all the video footage that I recorded from the insulation. I'm almost done with the insulation, but I've started putting everything into Adobe Premiere Pro so that I can edit it. So as I was watching clips, I'm listening to myself saying, hey guys, what's up? It's Serena from Thrift Diving. Yeah, we're going to get this insulation done in probably the next week. And I'm like, really, Serena? Really? You had no idea it was going to take you 4 weeks, or could be more. I actually didn't count, but it has not been a week. It's actually been much longer. But anyway, we'll talk about that. But let's talk about perfection. We all know in our minds, common sense tells us that nobody's perfect. But for some reason, we have this idea that we ourselves have to be perfect. We have to do things exactly right as it's supposed to be done. And if it's not good enough. We failed. And I think sometimes when we tell ourselves, well, I didn't do it exactly right, I failed, it gives us permission to, quote unquote, fail again and then fail again. And I'm thinking of this in several ways. Personally, I'm thinking of this, I'll share with you, and I think I told you this many of times before in previous episodes. Ever since early 2021, I've lost about 16 to 18 pounds, right? And this is through working out. I did Weight Watch. Well, I say I did Weight Watchers. I'll tell you that in just a moment. But watching what I eat, I run every morning, Monday through Friday. And all of this has helped me to lose weight. I've lost body fat, I've gained muscle, and I went several months, well, actually twice in the past several months. I had my body fat analyzed, well, not just body fat, body composition analyzed at this place called ID. I think it's called ID Composition, someplace in DC, and I think they've got one in Virginia. I'm not sure if it is a national chain or if it's just something that's local to this area. But I was able to go and get my body composition tested, and I've been doing pretty good for myself. Well, back in November, Weight Watchers decided you know what? We're going to change this plan. We're going to turn this into a personal points plan. Instead of you getting 30 points on the green plan, they had 3 color plans. It was green, blue, and purple. And I was on the green plan. So instead of getting 30 points, we're now going to have you take an assessment, and we will determine how many points based on your answers you're going to get per day and how many weekly points that you can use for extra food or whatever it is you want to use them for. And we're going to change things up so that now you actually have to earn more points through eating vegetables, drinking water, and doing all these healthy things. Now, generally, I think I'm pretty healthy, but I've got a huge sweet tooth. So I started getting a little frustrated because I couldn't eat some of the stuff that I wanted to eat in the quantities that I wanted to eat. And I decided, you know what, I'm going to cancel Weight Watchers. I'm going to switch to this other app, and then found, you know what, this isn't working for me either. I still am going over my points. This is just not working. I'm going to switch to MyFitnessPal, and I'm going to count calories. And I did that. And then I started getting real lazy with my tracking. I'd track one day, and then the next day I would just kind of eat kind of whatever I wanted, trying to be mindful, not perfect, but trying to be mindful, but not tracking. And then I noticed the scale starting to move up a little bit. And you know that telltale sign when you step on and you're like, what? Hold up. I cannot believe I've gained 2 pounds. And you don't know if it's 2 pounds of water. You don't know if it's just whatever is going on in your body, if it's that time of the month. You don't know what's going on. But you know the scale's going up, and you know that you're not doing what you did back when you were having a lot of success. So this past week, I decided I need to get back to Weight Watchers. Even though I didn't like all the restrictions put on me, that was working for me, and I'm going to give it a good try. So that's what I did. And today's Friday, so I started it on Wednesday. I signed back up. They had an amazing deal. It was like 3 months free, and then you have to pay for 3 months. Overall, it came to like $10 a month. Much better than the $21.95 they were charging. Okay, sign me up. So I decided to sign up, and Wednesday I did so well, but I still went over 10 points. I was not perfect. I wanted to do my best to stay within that 20-point range. And the thing is, the way that they changed the program, and I'm not an affiliate in any kind of way, just to let you know up front, I'm not promoting them in any way, but I was trying to be as good as I could, but I still went over my points. And with this new program, when you take the assessment, they give you quote unquote free stuff that you didn't have before. So I get tofu for free because I'm vegetarian. I get beans, potatoes, and I get all these things for free. So I'm like, okay, cool. I'm going to eat those things and I'm going to stay away from sugar. And for the most part, I did. But I still went over my points. I wasn't feeling bad. I was not beating myself up because what I did was I went to MyFitnessPal and I entered all the same foods. And I said, well, let me add up how many calories this is. And when I added it up, it came out to be like 1,300 and some calories. So in my mind, I'm like, oh my gosh, I went over 10 points and I'm still kind of within where I need to be in order to drop these last few pounds. So I felt like I was doing something good. But this week I'd been so busy that I wasn't getting to the gym. Normally I go Mondays, Thursdays, and Saturday. Well, Monday I was busy working in the shed, covered in insulation dust and particles. So I didn't go on Monday because insulation is not a project where you could just stop, go work out, and then come back to it. No, when you're in insulation, you have to be in for the entire day until you're done. Then you go shower, wash it all off, scratch your body, which is what I did. And then that's it. You go back the next day and you start working on it. But I didn't go on Monday. And so even though my eating habits, I was back on track with my eating habits, focusing on not snacking, not going through the kitchen and just grabbing a handful of pretzels, just really being mindful. And yesterday, which was Thursday, was a gym day for me. And I was working. I was here in the basement working on some scripts for some videos that I have to do for a company. And I was just about to say, you know what? I'm busy. I'm just going to just keep working on this because this is important. I'll go to the gym some other time. Maybe I'll go on Saturday. And I told myself, you know what, Serena, this isn't what we do. We don't make excuses and let other things get in the way of what we're doing. If we have a plan to go to the gym, then we're going to go to the gym. And I took my son, my youngest son, he loves playing basketball, and we knew we wouldn't have very much time. Usually 6 o'clock, they bring in the volleyball nets and they have people that come in to play volleyball. So I knew he would only have 15, 20 minutes, 20 minutes max. Once he's done, I feel bad with him just sitting around. So I knew that I would only have 20 minutes. But you know what I did? I packed up my computer, shut it off, and I went and put my gym clothes on. And I said to myself, Serena, this is about being consistent and not about being perfect. So if I go to the gym, I don't have to put in a full 45-minute workout in order to feel like I'm doing something. I have to be mindful that the consistency matters more than the perfection. And I'll say that again because that's the crux of what I realized yesterday in going to the gym and putting in, a hard 20 minutes, but I was lifting a pretty good amount of weight. I focused on doing abdominals. I didn't stress myself out with doing anything other than 3 exercises. And I did a 5-minute warm up. But I said, Serena, the key is to be consistent and not perfect. The workout was not perfect. I would have had more time to do maybe a few more sets of maybe 1 or 2 more exercises, but I did what I could. And that little bit of time made me realize it's about being consistent. I go to the gym on Thursdays. That's what I told myself that I would do. And that's what I'm going to do. Even if I only have 20 minutes, I'm going to go and be consistent. And I've been trying to live by this idea of consistency for 2022. I think I said it in a previous episode that consistency for me is more important than perfection. That is the word I'm going for, consistency for 2022. So I've been repeating this mantra to myself, and I'm going to repeat it to you. If I have not said it before, I'm going to say it now, and you'll probably hear me say it many more times throughout the year. But the key phrase that I've been telling myself, and I feel like I need to pull out my Cricut and make a shirt, and I'm not kidding you. I'm literally thinking about doing this because the key phrase is this: you don't have to be perfect, but you do have to be consistent. And I realize there are so many things in our lives that we do that is really not based on perfection. It's based on consistency. Take the person who has been able to save up enough money in their retirement account. They may not make a lot of money in their day job, but they've consistently put away $50 a paycheck, $100, $200, whatever that figure is, they've been able to consistently put that away every paycheck. And that consistency over time has worked to their benefit. People who go for walks. Now, walking is still a great exercise, but a lot of times people discount it and don't think that it's that great because you're not huffing and puffing and running up hills. I mean, you might be walking up hills, but you're not exerting the effort and sweating buckets of sweat. But they're consistently going every morning at 4 o'clock. And I'm using that as an example because my husband literally gets up and walks at 4 a.m. But he has not been consistent. So that's, I do actually get on him. I'm like, hey, are you walking tomorrow? You haven't been walking this week, but he will get up and walk. But that person that gets up and does it consistently, regardless of whether they go for 30 minutes or an hour, they consistently get up and do it. And they don't let perfection be the reason why they don't do it. Well, I'm not going to go because I can't get my full hour. So I'm just not going to go. I'll do it some other time when I can get my hour. And I think the same can be true of DIY projects because I think people get so caught up in this idea that, in order for me to do a project, it's got to be perfect. All the conditions have to be perfect. I have to have an 8-hour stretch of a Saturday. And in that 8 hours, I've got to have all the tools that I need. I have to have the right color paint. I have to have all these things just right in order for me to work on this project. And because I don't, maybe I only have 2 hours, I'm just not even going to get started. I don't have enough time. And we use this excuse so many times because we want everything to be perfect before we get started on something that we waste the opportunity to even get started, to even make progress. So I'm telling you this now, I'm getting goosebumps as I'm talking about this because I feel so strongly that consistency is the pillar of success. Everything that we do in life that gets us results, it's consistency. So I posted about this this morning, actually, on my personal Facebook page. And this man, his name's Scott, he's done a complete transformation. I don't even remember how he and I became friends, but he's a guy who does curly hair, right? Like he's like a curly hair guru. And I think he might have a blog. His name is Scott Musgrove. If you know him, tell him I'm talking about him on my podcast. But I believe he's got a salon and he does courses and all kinds of things on teaching people how to manage their curly hair. So he had commented on my post and he said, this is great that you're calling out consistency as being a key factor, because I was looking at it as just something that I was doing in my business, but I'm seeing that it is true for like my personal life too. That's when I started thinking everything that I have done in my life where I've been successful, it's all related to consistency. Not perfection, but consistency. Even just starting this blog, starting this podcast, starting the YouTube channel with thrift diving. I remember way, way back when, and I can even look at my statistics. You can go all the way back to 2012 when I started, I think maybe it was January, February or so when I started my YouTube channel of 2012. You can see there was nobody watching my channel. There was nobody watching, but I started putting out videos and I did it consistently. Now, consistently at that time is kind of a loose, even now, I mean, I don't regularly, aside from this podcast, I don't regularly put out videos as in, every Wednesday at 11 o'clock. I mean, to me, that's perfection. And I'm just not there, honey. I'm just not there. But I'm consistent in that I'm not letting large gaps of time, like 2 or 3 months. And then I'm like, well, maybe I should do the video thing. Okay, let me put out a video. And then it's 6 months. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about consistently putting out content, even if it's kind of irregular. I'm still putting out content, at least one video a month, depending on my schedule. So back when nobody was even looking at my channel, when no one was even reading my blog posts, I was still writing. I was still posting. Early on in this podcast, I can't even tell you how many people were listening. Now, I think I may get, on average, let's say every week, an average of like maybe 285 downloads. That's not a lot. But honestly, I don't care if it's a lot because you're listening. To me, that makes a world of difference. You're listening. You show up. I don't care if it's 2,800 or 28,000. If it's 280, you're listening to me. That's what matters. I'm showing up every week. Even if I'm having to rush home, sit down and figure out, what am I talking about today? I'm still going to do it. So that consistency, when I was responding to Scott's message, I realized, oh my gosh, like, consistency really is the pillar of success. It's not about being perfect, because if it was perfection, then I would have had the videos perfected even before I started. I would have had my blog posts perfected. My pictures would have been perfect. That's not where I started, but because I was consistent with putting out that content, I've been able to grow my channel to what it is, grow my blog. And when I say grow it, I mean, yeah, I don't have 1 million subscribers, but I don't care. I love everybody that shows up here. I love what I do, and I show up and I do it every week. So I want you to think about in your life, what are those things that you have been telling yourself that you have to be perfect before you actually do them? And I want you to list it, write it down. Maybe you don't have to write it down. It's probably just 1 or 2 things. Like, it's probably something that's been bothering you, whether it's a project that you wanted to start, whether you've been trying to get on this weight loss thing that everybody's doing at the beginning of the year. Whatever it is, don't feel that you have to be perfect. Just be consistent and show up. In the mornings I run usually about 5 miles. That's kind of my average. And if the kids are off school that day, I will try to do a little bit longer. I'll do maybe 8 miles, 9. Well, just recently I decided, oh my gosh, I'm going to run a half marathon this morning. The kids, they're off school today, so I'm going to run 13.1 miles. Well, I made it to about 10.4 miles, and then I just pooped out. I totally pooped out because I needed to change from a podcast to music. Like, I started fumbling with my phone, and I just was like, I'm tired. My legs are tired. And I gave up. But I could have really been down on myself. Well, you said you were going to do a goal. You didn't do it. You failed. No, I still ran 10.4 miles. That's the most that I've run since, 2017. I've been this on again, off again, inconsistent runner, but I've been running consistently this time since maybe June. And that's the most that I've run since June. So I'm going to celebrate that. So what are the things that you have been thinking that you have to be perfect on before you get started or before you do it? Or because you weren't perfect, now you're going to throw in the towel and just eat that entire plate of cookies because, well, maybe you said you weren't going to eat any cookies and you had 2 cookies. Well, now everything's gone to crap. I may as well just eat the entire sleeve of Girl Scout cookies. No, be consistent. And what I mean by that is figure out what that consistency looks like for you. So for me, consistency was tracking. Even if I went over my points, even if I went over my calories, whatever platform it was that I'm using, that was my consistency because that consistency made me look hard at what it is that I was doing. What was that activity that I was doing? Was I eating pizza? Well, okay, well, you ate 3 slices. You were only supposed to have 1. Fine. Put it in the tracker and tomorrow you'll do better. But that was the consistency that I was looking for. And I started losing that. And I realized whoa, hold up. I just lost my consistency. So even though I'm back to Weight Watchers and oh my gosh, I don't know if there was even one day that I've stayed within my points. But the way the program is designed, I don't necessarily have to stay within my points. In order to be successful, I just have to track because that tracking alone is going to make me mindful of what it is I'm putting in my mouth. It's not going to totally curb my sugar cravings, but it's going to make me think, okay, well, this has 15 points. Do I really want to eat this or do I want to go and eat that? But if I eat this, that means for dinner, I got to be a little bit, more mindful and maybe eat my 0-point foods. So whatever it is that you are trying to be perfect about, let go of that. Just really focus on being consistent and figure out what that consistent activity is. And the consistent activity could be, let's say, for example, you feel that you don't have any time to DIY, but maybe you actually do have time. Maybe Saturday mornings from 10 to 12, that's all you have. Maybe your spouse or whoever takes the kids out to the park or whatever they do from 10 to 12. And that's all you have. And you feel like, well, it's not perfect because I don't have time to pull everything out. That's a pain in the butt, pulling stuff out and having that cut into your work time. But if that's all you can do is spend 20 minutes pulling everything out and get a good an hour, 20 minutes of working, then that's good enough. Be consistent so that every morning or every Saturday morning, that's when you work on your project. And if it takes you extra long, well, guess what? It just takes you extra long. But be consistent. So let go of perfection and be consistent. And I'm hoping that this message is reaching at least one person because I felt it this week when I realized whoa, Serena, you have not consistently been tracking and it's throwing you off. But I felt really proud when it was Thursday and I knew Thursday is my day. That is the consistency that I have to do. If all I'm doing is coming down here to my basement on a Thursday when that's when I'm supposed to work out, and if all I can get in is a couple of dumbbell curls, well, guess what? I did it. I'm consistent with that. Or maybe instead of Thursday, maybe I'll go Friday. So I can't do it today because I really am busy with work, but I'll go. So stay consistent. Don't feel like you have to do it perfect every time, but just be consistent and be mindful of that process of showing up when you said you were going to show up. Now, the other thing that I learned this week, and this is a trite saying because we all know it, but it really presented itself this week. That trite saying, work smarter, not harder. We've all heard that. Well, this week I have been working in my shed on the insulation. And again, I thought that I was going to be done this insulation some time ago. I thought weeks ago I'd be done this, but I'm not. When I did the walls, the insulation in the walls was fine. That didn't really take very much time. And I'm using a product called rock wool. And instead of fiberglass, it's a stone, very dense insulation. It works very well. It's a good sound dampening insulation. So when I walk into the shed now, oh my gosh, there's no echo. It sounds fabulous. So I'll actually be able to do my podcast in there. Right now, you probably don't notice that there's a little bit of an echo, but I'm in my basement where I've been for the last number of years. And you will be able to tell once I start recording over in the shed. But the walls were not that hard. And then it's so funny on the video, one video clip, I'm saying to you in the clip, yeah, we've got the walls done. I'm going to start the ceiling and I'll be done in probably a couple days. Yeah, right. The ceiling was so hard. Now, in the walls, the R value is like an R15. R15, basically that tells you how resistant that insulation is to heat transference. So of course you're going to keep the heat out, keep the heat in, and the higher the number, the better resistant it is. And it's also going to be thicker. So because my shed is a 2x4 framing, the R13 and the R15 is like 3.5 inches thick. It's perfect for a 2x4 shed. So that was the easy part because it's very dense. Well, let me tell you this. When I opened up this, R30, this stuff was a good, 8 inches? Maybe a good 8 inches thick. And it was so crumbly. It was almost like working with cotton candy. That's how, I'm being a little facetious, but it actually kind of looked like cotton candy too. It just had that wispiness to it. And it was not as densely packed as the R15. So as I'm climbing up on the ladder, I didn't have a platform. The very first section there that I was trying to squeeze this insulation into, it just fell on my head. Now it's light. I didn't hurt myself. But I had this moment of, oh my goodness, how in the world am I going to get this done? All the videos that I'd watched, it looked easy. It looked easy, but that's when they were using multiple people. And this insulation that I'm using, it doesn't have a backing on it. Typically, like let's say fiberglass insulation, you'll notice it's got like a paper backing on it. That's the vapor barrier. So if you are using insulation that has that backing on it, that's your vapor barrier. You don't have to put anything over top of it. Rock wool doesn't have any backing to it, doesn't have a vapor barrier. You have to add one. And a 6 mil piece of plastic is perfect. You can go higher, but I think the minimum that you want to use is like a 6 mil. So what I did was I cut individual strips to attach. You'll see this in the video. I'm going to post it hopefully over the weekend, but you'll see me hoisting this thing up. It's literally on my shoulder, and this insulation is very crumbly. So you can't see it, but I can feel it. My neck was so itchy, it was not even funny. I'm hoisting this thing up and I'm trying to stick it into the 24-inch on-center framing for the trusses. And then I'm trying to staple the plastic in real quick. I cut it into strips and I just decided, going strip by strip is probably going to be the easiest thing for me versus other ways that I'd seen it done where people would put it in the ceiling and then take one big sheet of plastic and cover it up all at one time. That was not happening. This stuff was falling down around me, just trying to get it in. So it took me I did one entire side in this really slow method of, stick it up there, very carefully pull the plastic in place and staple it. And I would do one at a time. Well, it wasn't until I got to the very end of that first section of the trusses when moving on to the next part, I got this, I'm being sarcastic here. I got this brilliant idea to cut smaller pieces of plastic and staple those up and then just slide the big pieces of insulation in, and that plastic was holding it in place. Now, it's kind of hard to visualize this, especially if you haven't seen, I've been actually posting about this on my Facebook Reels. So if you are following me on Facebook, I will leave links down below. But if you haven't seen these videos, go check them out. You'll see what I'm talking about. It was mind-blowing how much faster I was able to move just by putting up these smaller pieces of plastic. And I would say these pieces of plastic were maybe about 1.5 feet wide. And then I would just staple that into place and slide the piece of insulation in so that it was held in place. And I worked so much faster. Oh my gosh. Like in just about a day and a half, I was able to finish the entire other side. Whereas the first side, it took me probably about 4 or 5 days maybe to get that all done. So the point here is that, and I think it's hard because when you start a project, you just don't know what you don't know until you start. But again, try to plan out what you're doing. And, even though I didn't really have a plan for how I was going to attack, I didn't plan totally properly. I knew what materials I needed, but I didn't know that this stuff was going to be so difficult to install, that gravity was going to be working against me because the insulation in the walls, that literally just, like I had to push that into place and it was wedged in place, but that was not the case for the ceiling. This stuff was falling out. It was not as easy. And I didn't expect that. I just didn't know. And it's really funny when I go to Home Depot or Lowe's and I'll look at the reviews. Sometimes I'll do it beforehand, but other times I'll look at it maybe after the fact and I'll say, well, are other people having these problems? And some people most people gave this product, the rock wool, 5 stars, 4 or 5 stars, because it is a great product. I mean, it really improves on the sound quality in your room or your shed, wherever it is you're using the insulation. But there was a lot of people that said, look, this stuff is very crumbly, trying to put it in the ceiling, like it's falling apart. And there were times when you'll see this in the video clip because I will put it in the YouTube video. There were times I'm putting this stuff in the ceiling and because it's long and I'm hoisting it up on my head, it's kind of tearing right there in half. So it was a very challenging project. And where I am right now is I have everything in the ceiling. One side is completely covered in plastic. Remember, that's the side I did initially. And then the second side just has the little strips holding it into place. And I need to cover that up with the 6 mil vapor barrier. And I have to do the walls too. I have to put the vapor barrier there. Once I do that, oh my goodness, I am done. I do believe I never want to do insulation again. It's really funny when I say that because when I initially had gotten the insulation delivered, the guy who delivered it for Home Depot, he had made this comment to me when I told him, I said, yeah, I'm doing my own insulation. He said, oh my goodness. And this is a big burly dude, right? He's like, oh my goodness, I never want to do insulation ever. I did it like maybe 15 years. I'll never do it again. And I'm thinking, it can't be that hard. Like really, I did tell him, I'm like, you're kind of scaring me a little bit. It can't be that difficult. It's not difficult, but if you're doing it by yourself, it's not fun. It's really, really not fun not doing the ceiling because all of that stuff floats down on top of you. And no matter what I did, it got all over my neck and it was just itchy, like my face and my neck. So at the end of the night, I would shower and I could feel the prickles all over my neck. Thankfully, after I showered, I put on some cream and it was fine. No lasting problems or anything like that, but it was uncomfortable. It was definitely uncomfortable. But the lesson here is how can you work smarter, not harder? Initially, I was working very hard by trying to get these big pieces up and have everything stapled into place properly, whereas I really should have been focused on just getting it in and making sure that it stayed in place. Now, they do make this product. Your trusses are going to have 24 inches on center spacing between the trusses. And these little metal rods, they're very flexible and they have these pointy ends and they're supposed to just wedge that insulation up in there between those trusses. Those things didn't really work. I used maybe a couple of them, but they twist and turn. And even if you put those up ahead of time and then try to slide your insulation in, it's not going to work. The thing that worked for me was just having a piece of plastic up first and then just sliding it in. And I've seen people on YouTube actually put the entire huge piece of plastic up first and then sliding it in. You can do that. But for me, I felt I wouldn't be able to get to the insulation because I still want to make sure that it's in place. So by doing smaller pieces, it held it in place and I was still able to maneuver it where I needed it to be. And, going back to perfection, when I got to the end, I think I was down to like the last 2 bays where the insulation needed to go. Maybe it was the last 3. I had run out of insulation that properly fit. Normally I was using the 24-inch pieces, right? I ran out of those and I only had some 15, 16-inch pieces. So I had to piecemeal it together. And at some point I was feeling some kind of way. I was like, this is not what I'm supposed to be using. I need the 24-inch pieces. And then I let go of that desire to be perfect and said, Serena, it's not going to make a difference. Just piecemeal this together. Once the plastic's up, once the drywall's up, nobody's going to know. And as long as it does the job it's supposed to, which is keeping the cold air in, keeping the hot air in the winter, the cold air in during the summer, then that's all that matters. Stop trying to be perfect. You don't have to be perfect. So again, try to find ways to let go of the perfection and be consistent with whatever it is that you're doing. And also try to work smarter, not harder. And again, you may not know what working smarter is, but I was so excited when I figured out how to work smarter. Later that night, I told my husband, I was like, guess what? I figured out how to cut these strips of plastic so I can just slide the insulation in, and it went faster. I used my supercomputer, meaning my brain, because he always tells that to the kids. He's like, you got to use your supercomputer. So we were laughing about it in the kitchen because I was just so excited that I used my supercomputer. You know, my husband is very resourceful. He's so full of solutions. Whatever problem you have, he will come up with a solution. And sometimes I am someone, again, who wants to do things perfectly by the book. And he's like, well, you don't have to do that. Just do this. And I'm like, oh, I guess I didn't realize I could do this. I thought I had to do that. So he was very proud of me for coming up with a solution, and I was proud of myself. So now I'm going to put it on you. Back to perfection. Think about those things in your life that you are trying to make sure things are just perfect before you do it. And if it's not perfect, then you're going to think, oh, everything's just gone to heck. No, be consistent. Just be consistent. You don't have to be perfect. Just be consistent. Go do that workout. And if you normally like to get 60 minutes, but you can only get 30 minutes, that's okay. You were consistent. You did it. Just do it consistently. If you have to change your day and you normally work out 3 days a week, but you can only do 2 days because of something, that's okay. Just be consistent as best as you can and try to work smarter, not harder. And when you finally figure out that smarter route, give yourself a pat on the back. It feels good when you figure out how to do it better. All right, guys, that's what I have for you this week. I will tell you that the insulation is almost done. So the video for this, I think I'm going to probably have it maybe Sunday, Monday. I know that Arrow Fastener is sponsoring it and they keep emailing me like every week. Hey, Serena, where's that project? And I'm like, it's coming. I swear it's coming to you. But I've just been so delayed. So it's almost done. And I'm not sure whether or not I'm going to do the drywall myself. I think I told you that last week. I'm still on the fence. I feel like I want to do it. I've put all this time and effort into my shed this far. I've done the insulation. I did the electrical work on the inside. I feel like I want to do the drywall. In fact, there are people that are telling me, because I'm using this as a workshop, don't use drywall. Use wood. And I'm even thinking that maybe I need to put wood up. And if you use wood, you don't have to worry about hitting a stud for some of the lighter things that you might want to hang on the wall. You could literally organize things anywhere you want and not have to worry about finding a stud and properly anchoring, little small things here and there. So I'm considering it, but I really like the look of drywall and I just want it to look great. But you'll see that it's coming. All right, guys, that's what I got for you this week. Definitely hit me up on Instagram at Thrift Diving or send me an email if you want to respond to this and tell me, how have you let go of perfection? How are you trying to let go of perfection and be more consistent? And how do you work smarter, not harder? You can email me, Serena at thriftdiving.com, and I will see you next episode.